to think that we achieved, in terms of booking value, over 700K in January alone for influencer marketing, like I can only be really, really proud of the team and
That's
how
incredible.
Like everyone's kept their faith, which is great considering how much we were into negative at some point in summer.
Do you want to tell the world a little bit about you and Tourlane and what you've been up to over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm originally from the UK, but I moved to Berlin when I was only 13 years old with my family. Grew up, went to an American school, which is why I have a bit of an off accent. No one really knows where I'm from. I think the most common answer is Australian, and I've never been. I graduated from high school here, studied then international business and strategy, and then I really started my career at Zalando working with influencers. I think one of my dream jobs when I was a teenager was to run my own model agency. And so when I had the chance to work in like an agency setting, but for influencers, a lot of whom are also models, I thought that was a really cool kind of step in the right direction. But I just got like sucked into this whole influencer world and really improved like communication skills and negotiation and everything. And then at some point I was also working for a more lifestyle brand, doing like wall art and posters. And that's where I got really hands-on. Like I think one weekend over Black Friday, we were running 400 influencer campaigns just over the course of those 4 days. So it was way more hands-on, like really getting down to like the nitty-gritty stuff. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the communication side of it. I really enjoy also seeing kind of how the performance works and how much brand awareness you can really bring in with influencer marketing. And that's when I decided then to join Tourlane. They were looking for someone to basically kickstart all influencer operations. So I think they'd tested out maybe 2 or 3 influencers in the past who were kind of like friends of friends who happened to have quite a good following on different channels. But they saw a lot of potential in it and they really wanted to hire someone to completely start this new marketing channel for Tourlane.
Can you, for the investors out there listening, give the elevator pitch for what Tourlane is kind of and what you do?
We basically customize trips. We're really involved in personalized travel. So when you come to us and say, okay, I would like to do 2 weeks South Africa, here's my budget, you'll get connected to an expert for South Africa. So this means someone who knows the good restaurants. It means they know which route to drive to see all the cool things. They're really very passionate as well, of course, about what we're doing. And we customize and personalize an entire trip for you.
Get the most out of your trip by booking it with Tourlane, and they take care of all the nitty-gritty details and make sure you have a jam-packed, action-packed, fun experience. You told me a bunch of secrets before the show about how incredibly successful you've been with creators over there. So maybe you can give us like the high-level overview of how influencer partnerships look at Tourlane. How does it kind of look, and then what's the status from like an execution perspective? Are you crushing it, and how crushing it are you?
Since we started, we're basically sending influencers on trips on our cost. So we have all different sizes as well. I think one of the smallest influencers we had recently, about 18,000 followers, but we've also worked with influencers with about 500,000 followers before too. Really a huge range, and we're always kind of willing to test out different sizes, different niches and everything too. It kind of just keeps it more exciting, and always looking for the new talent as well. We're asking them in exchange to post for us over 3 different phases, since Tourlane is so heavily focused, of course, on our service and what we can provide in terms of like the planning process, the booking process. You have 2 or 3 calls with your own destination expert, basically, for the destination you'd like to go to. So we have one posting phase where they just focus on pre-trip. So before they pack any bags out at all, it's normally about 2 weeks before. And they really talk about, okay, like this is the booklet that we got now. It's got a packing list, like what do you really need to pack for a trip to Thailand, for example. Here's your route, here are phone numbers in case of emergency. Really some insider tips in the little booklet that you get delivered to your home. And then we have on trip, of course, is the easiest for them to post about, I'm sure, where it's just every single day that's something really cool that we've planned in for them. And then we also have the post-trip phase where they can highlight their favorite memory, They, of course, also pushed the code again, just kind of summarize what an amazing experience it was. And for all of this, we kind of have these landing pages, individual landing pages for the influencers, where we create them as the influencer team to have like a map so that their followers can kind of follow them around the country. We have kind of destination highlights, like, okay, so in Cape Town, like, what is it really famous for? Which kind of wine places to go to? Or in
which kind of wine to drink?
Yeah, there's a lot of that in Cape Town.
Can you say how, like, what's your average checkout size for a customer, generally speaking?
I believe it's between 7,000 to 8,000 euros. So we're definitely looking at like a higher end. But one of the things that we really pride ourselves with as well is the cost of the stuff that we're selling, because a lot of these hotels are kind of boutique. They're not something you can just book on booking.com. Same as the different activities that we do. We do have them like with very local guides as well who really know what they're talking about. This isn't a mass group of tourists walking around with like an umbrella. It's really very personalized and very, small groups.
You're in the luxury stratosphere when it comes to how you think about influencer comp and that kind of thing, which is kind of nice. There's some benefits there for sure.
And that's something they really value too, is kind of having not only quite like always beautiful hotels and really cool activities, but also having someone to talk to that wants to get to know them as a family before planning anything for them. So they're really asking, okay, like, how active do you guys want to be on your trip? Would you prefer to do really like changing hotels every day, driving like, I don't know, 100K a day, or would you rather do 3 or 4 days here at the beach, then maybe a little city trip? And they really get to know you and the family or the person you're traveling with to tailor make these trips for the influencers, but also for our customers.
So how do you choose partners to work with when you know you're going to be giving them like something that's worth maybe $10,000, or I'm sure you even go a bit above and beyond for those creators?
Myself and the team really block out time in our calendars to scout for the perfect influencers. As you said, it's not any kind of product, I guess, I've worked with in the past that is considerably cheaper. These are really big trips, and of course we would then have a lot to lose if it doesn't go well. We're really focused a lot on like families, on moms, on slightly older couples, as that really hones into our target audience. So we think about who would be interested in traveling with Tourlane, and who would naturally, as an influencer, even want to book their own Tourlane with us in the future. So when we're looking at different accounts, we're looking where they're based, for example. We're looking at what kind of followers they have, what kind of content they're posting, and we're looking for that a little bit more like classy and sophisticated kind of influencers. What a lot of people think is, oh, so you work with travel influencers. Surprisingly not. I think this is always quite an interesting one, but we really kind of branch out a little bit more into niche as well, niche categories that don't include travel influencers. I think when it comes to travel influencers, there's just so much travel content on their pages that I feel we get a little bit lost maybe in the flow of things, and that they don't often perform as well. Whereas moms, maybe journalists, for example, like couples in their 40s plus, kind of like a little bit educated, higher disposable income families and audiences work really, really well for us. This is also very in line with our target audience, and of course. Yeah, our target audience isn't always following the traditional young, fun van or camper travel couple account. We do really want to work with people that value the cost of the trip, but also the experience themselves. So we do approach people who we think it would be great to take the planning off of their hands and to kind of give them this new experience that's maybe they haven't thought of before, or like they didn't think, oh, it would be really great to have someone just help me plan this trip because I've got 3 kids, it's way too busy, or I'm running my own business, for example. And then we've set up this entire scouting process. And this is where Modash comes in as well then, is, yeah, of course.
Exciting.
We really look at multiple different things that we're looking for in terms of KPIs that the influencers could bring to us as well. It has to be a two-way street in that sense. And the first thing we look for, of course, are their statistics, and that's when we go to Modash. We really check out the engagement rate. We're really looking at the audience demographics. Of course, we want, for the German influencers, for example, a very, very high percentage of DACH followers, like German, Swiss, and Austrian. We also want a very high percentage of slightly older audience, so often like 30, 35 plus. Although we do have lots of male customers in general at Tourlane, we find that a lot of the influencers bring in more female customers for us. So we also lean a little bit more towards more female audiences. We then drag this across all this data and information into something that we've built up over the last few months called our scorecard, which is like the holy grail of scouting. It's amazing, where we basically have weighted the importance of lots of different factors in terms of content, whether they have their own business and they're promoting that on their page, whether they have at least 3 trips in their highlights of their stories. There's really like such a long list, whether they have children, what age range they are, whether they use filters, and we really look through the content, and we often monitor the content for a few days to kind of watch the stories. Do they involve us in their daily lives all the time, or is it more when they do something special once a week, then they do stories? So we weigh all of this up and compute it in this internal scorecard that we've built, combine that with what we pull from Modash then as well, and then we come up with basically, it's almost like a grade out of 100. And if the influencers are exceeding this grade, we're like always more than happy to work with them. I think it's really worth giving them a shot. I think the third thing that comes into play is how much they want to travel. We have sometimes influencers who don't even know we're doing influencer activities at Tourlane, and they're already booking their own trips through Tourlane. So these are easy to work with. These people are so enthusiastic. They're so excited to book their own trip anyway. And we've had, for example, one influencer who I reached out to, and I was a bit initially like, okay, I think she'll perform well, but like, let's gauge a little bit more her interest rate, like her interest level, because the more enthusiastic the influencers are about travel, the more they can sell it, the more happy they'll be on the trip, the more leads, of course, come in for us then as well. And I spoke to her on the phone, and she was like close to tears. She was so excited and like really moved by this opportunity. And I picked up on this because she'd actually made a story saying, or someone had done it like in a Q&A, oh, who would be your dream collaboration partners? And she'd mentioned us. So I immediately reached out and I was like, okay, like let's talk, we can get on the phone. And her stories were just so emotional and so passionate and enthusiastic that she was really, in her stories, like tears running down her face, being like, I cannot wait to go to Iceland next week. It's going to be incredible. Like, we've dreamed about this as a family.
I was thinking to myself, what is it about you that that's a little different? And I think there's a part of you that really humanizes the creator, which makes all of this so much more fun, because now you're kind of looking for a person, a partner that you can kind of give this great experience to, and that you can work together to create this thing. I don't know if you think that's like part of the magic of you and of Tourlane, is just that you, by humanizing the creator, all of those detailed, all that little detailed work becomes a lot more fun, I think.
I do really enjoy this part of the job too, and I think I've always heard like let's automate as much as we can in all of like the past years I've been working in influencer marketing. And I think that's probably where most companies would like to go, but you cannot beat a personal touch. Like, you can't beat someone coming into your DMs from a company and saying, look, I just watched your Greece highlights from last year and I went to the same restaurant and like, oh, it was so much fun. Like, I'm so happy you experienced that. What we're doing at Tourlane is this. When listening to my team talk to influencers, when thinking about the communication myself, I think it's contagious just how excited someone can be to even send someone else on a trip. So I think this is something that really excites me when looking for new accounts, is that I can just imagine them and their family on a beach in Seychelles or in the jungle of Costa Rica, and I think to myself, oh, the kids are going to love to go whale watching. I've booked too many trips already, but I'm always looking to book another one. But I think that the way you talk about your product or service and like the passion that you have for it really comes across to the creators as well. So when I'm looking and scouting and doing all these like tedious tasks that most people would be like, okay, another hour and then I'm done. I think it's just inspiring to think about, okay, I can imagine them doing all these incredible things together.
Everybody knows the word personalization, and then very few people can actually get personally interested. And I think there's like a very magical difference there in the end result of everything, because then the outreach is better. You wake up more enthusiastic about building the system. Everything just gets, you build trust way more easily. Yeah. If you're like the sales guy in the inbox that says, "Dear Mr. Avery Schrader, I see you work at Modash," and it's like, this is personalized, sure, but it's not personal. And I think the mindset maybe behind it is a bit the difference. So super impressive. But coming back down to the brass tacks here, let's talk about this scorecard. How did you find the initial criteria for the scorecard, and then how do you iterate on it over time?
Yeah, so actually this was set up internally. We had some people from our business development team really help out here, and yeah, I think one of our team members really monitored these influencers that had performed really well for us for days, even weeks, where she really looked through every single post and every single story for so long, and basically compiled all of her suggestions as to what makes these best performers really stand out. So before we had the scorecard and before we had these, we were kind of just shooting our shot, seeing, okay, so let's do quite a comedy account for a family. Let's do way more like single mom and daughter. Like, let's do lots of different categories. Let's see sustainable influencers. And then compile who's performed well, who, not even in terms of sales necessarily, but also in terms of brand awareness. Like, when did we see the spikes in followers coming into the Tourlane account? So we really looked through these, analyzed them, and thought to ourselves, okay, so who performed well enough that we would definitely want to work with them again, and what made them stand out? Was there any patterns that we could pick up there? And we kind of pulled one by one from all the content, a huge list of criteria where we're thinking, okay, if they have this, 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 and this, we can work with them. And that's someone we're really excited to work with. And a lot of it comes down as well to like different categories of influencers, of course, different age ranges. Of course, we've also had like cases where the influencer had, I think, like 8 or 9 children. How does that work compared to a single child? And really weighed up every part of their content, not only from traveling with us, but I think just over the course of weeks to start to put together all of these different weighted inputs that we could measure.
Awesome. What I love about this is that you didn't really bias yourselves anywhere. You just kind of threw spaghetti at first, and then you have this you have so much to work with from there. Now you have data that you can actually look and see and build some assumptions. And I'm sure that was difficult. I know as marketers we tend to live in the box that we're most comfortable with, and if you're in a travel company, that box is probably travel creators, and we get that kind of feedback all the time. If you're a crypto company, you want to work with crypto people. If you're a furniture company, you want to work with lamp influencers or whatever.
I think we've also really seen that travel influencers are not our highest performers.
Tell me more.
So I think
how did you figure this out?
It's kind of coming back to what I said before, where I think it's maybe too much travel content on their pages. Their audience just wants to constantly be inspired and see beautiful pictures and beautiful destinations, but don't have that purchasing want or need necessarily. Whereas moms or slightly older couples, journalists especially, this kind of higher income, educated, sophisticated profiles, I think their followers genuinely follow them for advice as well. And if they see, oh, okay, so they took a trip with Tourlane and they said all this amazing stuff, like they really showed us like step by step what they put together for them. They've really highlighted that to get a trip plan, it's for free still. Like you're not obliged to pay for this at all. And they really hone in on this as well. And I think the audience is just kind of like, okay, like it's worth a try. And I think once you're then an initial lead coming into Tourlane and you're feeling inspired and you're feeling like, okay, maybe like we could take a trip at some point, I think just the level of expertise that our destination experts have just suck you in completely. And then it's kind of like a done deal, because I think the product, is so amazing, but the service that our experts offer in terms of personalizing such a cool trip for a family or friends traveling together, or we've had like grandparents traveling together, I think this sells itself basically.
To summarize, sourcing, you took a back catalog of partners you had, and you brainstormed a bunch and dug into the data about who works well. You got really granular about some of the trends you might have seen there and then started throwing spaghetti so that you could get more data. Then you made some assumptions about which creators work well. You stuck them in a scorecard. That scorecard has weighted values, like how many kids they have or what their job is, how enthusiastic they are. From there, you use a tool like ours or however you source people otherwise. I think you probably have a lot of inbound interest as well. We can talk about that. But you map people against those criteria. Then you have this weighted list of the perfect creator who you know is going to convert, and you can go ahead and swoop in, slide into the DMs, as they say. I'm scared as folks listen to this. I can imagine some of the folks we do calls with, and the cop-out might be, I'm not travel, I can't give that experience. But as I think about someone we're going to talk to soon is from a company called Surfshark. It's a VPN company. And they produce a ridiculous amount of content, and it performs super well with creators all over the world. This is really hard to create a great experience for, but what they've done is there's this amazing YouTube video. We're going to talk about it more in that episode, so I won't go super deep now. But there's an amazing video where this guy they had sponsored. The whole concept of the video is I tried to get fired from Surfshark. And then the way they created delight for this guy was they said, please push creative boundaries and just keep pushing. You can't break us. There's nothing we will say no to. And so he made these like as intense as you can put on YouTube. This guy made in an attempt to get them to shut it down. And the whole concept of this video is him walking through each of these partnerships and how he couldn't. The title is like, please fire Surfshark, please fire me, or something like this. And yeah, it's a really interesting case of how it's a digital product. It's a VPN. It sits in your Chrome extension, your extension bar. You never think about it, but they managed to find an angle to make it delightful. And I think anybody can do that. I mean, a physical product is maybe much easier than an app, but even app companies figure it out, or digital products figure it out. Do you think it's worth diving deeper into experience? Is there something specific about how you treat creators throughout the funnel that other folks could replicate?
Yeah, so I can definitely, I was really thinking about what kind of feedback or even advice that I could kind of bring to the table here too. Because I've worked myself as an influencer, I've worked from an agency perspective, and now I'm so heavy on the brand side. So I was really thinking about how to kind of tie that together and give some kind of advice to anyone who's also entering this game for the first time or looking to make new experiences. The number one thing I would always say is don't be scared to make it personal. I think the whole idea of like, okay, let's just try and pump out as many leads and outreach emails as possible. I think it can work if your product is something people can't resist. But it works so much better if you've formed a kind of relationship with the content creators. The best performers, for us at least, are always the ones who we've really developed a connection with. We've had lots of phone calls with. When I'm traveling, they know about it. Like they're asking me like, okay, so I know you're in Thailand right now. Please give me some recommendations because we're really thinking about doing this in like a year or two with like the whole family. What would you suggest? And they also care about my travels too. So I think forming this like not just business relationship, but almost like on a friendship basis, having these relationships and making it so personalized, not just through our personalized travel, but to really see that even within marketing, we're making it personal. I think kind of ties in together for Tourlane really, really well. I have a good example. This morning I went out for a nice coffee chat with an influencer who's in Berlin right now, who'd just come back from 7 weeks with us in Vietnam.
Wow.
The original, so the collaboration part was a week trip, but she was absolutely blown away and so convinced of Tourlane, she paid and booked those extra weeks on top for herself, and this was all self-paid. And we had such a good chat, and it was so nice seeing her in person, of course, and I got like a huge hug, and we were like joking and laughing around, and she was just like, I absolutely loved your way of travel. And moving forward, like I'm already thinking, okay, I'll be paying for this one myself coming up. She wants to do Seychelles. I'd really love to do South Africa now. And she's like mentally already there in terms of, okay, next trip as a customer for Tourlane, not just an influencer. And I think this really shows that you can sell what your product or your service well when the influencers also pay for it themselves at this kind of price range.
Yeah, I was kind of mapping this against non-travel again in my head a little bit, trying to think that those little details, like you mentioned, the trip planner was like this, that she thought of her as this hero basically.
Yeah.
And I think it's the little things like, yeah, being kind to people in the outreach and negotiation, not pinching every penny during negotiation, I think is a good signal. A handwritten note when you deliver the product, getting the product there as fast as you can. Like, you're basically just trying to create the best possible customer experience that is physically possible for this creator and drive some delight.
And I can also kind of reflect that even in my past experience too. When I think about working for this wool art poster company, I remember also saying when they selected their posters, like, I've got this one at home. I love it in my kitchen. Like, you can always, even if it doesn't make sense, like, you can always try to somehow relate to them as well. Because in the end, they're still people. Like, I know that they're promoting their business and their brand and their pages and their profiles. But in the end, they also just want someone that they can easily talk to. And I think this is one of my biggest pieces of advice, is to really develop that connection and don't shy away from making it more and more personal, because I do think the better the connection that they have to you and to the product or service and the business, the more they will promote it in a positive light. And I think that's when you will see the performance come in.
Yeah, I think when people do outreach and when people start the communication flow, they're just so locked in a transactional, they're like bad salespeople basically. They're so locked into a transactional interaction that they can't get any results because the other person is not reciprocating with this like transactional nonsense. It's a lot like in sales. I mean, I think anybody listening who's closed larger sales deals hears a lot of familiarity in what you're saying. When I first started doing sales, I remember I had no idea what sales was, but I remember one thing that I said to Mattis, who I was learning sales with at the same time, and I said, like, what if we just become the person who cares the most about their work in their entire life? Their mother doesn't know what they do. Nobody's mother knows what they do. Their boss hardly pays attention to what they're doing unless they hit targets or don't hit targets or whatever the thing is. So what if we actually just genuinely care about what they're doing? And this was, it works super well. And I think it applies to probably most things in life, but definitely creator partnerships. Anything else from this experiential, like creator experience optimization tidbits that you folks have done, especially like stealable things?
I would say genuinely don't shy away from being really proud of the business you work for.
Yeah.
I think this is such an important one, and I think you can apply that to any industry as well. Like, it's something that the recruiter tries to sell you when you're applying for the job. It's something the salespeople try and sell the customers. If you jumped on board with this, you can make anyone jump on board with it. You don't need to kind of play it cool. I think the creators do that enough a lot of the time. So you have to be the one just being super enthusiastic, really loving what you're doing. And even if you're having a bad day, you can always jump on that call and just fake it till you make it, and really just push out that kind of positive energy and be that light in the day where they say, okay, actually this person loves their own product. This is amazing. Like, then it must be good. Because in the end, we're all influencing each other anyway. And I think the more you can influence their opinion of the product or service, the more successful the campaigns will be, not only in terms of brand awareness and how they really talk about the product, but this will in the end also convert sales-wise too.
Has there been any like pushback to this no cash up front kind of policy you folks have, or have you had any really difficult negotiations that actually ended well that you can provide some insight on maybe? Yeah,
absolutely. So it's something that we've always had in the back of our minds, as since we're a paid marketing channel with these huge budgets for the trips, that we would always, of course, want to avoid paying extra budget on top. And I think this is almost unheard of within influencer marketing. And I think only people within the industry know how incredible that is, that we haven't actually paid any budget on top for a year and a half now and work with so many different creators of different sizes. And we do get a lot of pushback on this, and I understand why. And it's never that we wouldn't want to appreciate the effort and the work that goes into this enough. It's more so that travel as a commodity is already worth so much. We do, of course, have some creators saying, okay, actually, my rate for all the content you're asking for is 30, 60, 90,000 euros. Like, what kind of trip are you really going to provide us? Is it going to be worth that much? And I always come back to the same thing, that you can, please feel free to have a look at these 3 influencers who are currently traveling with us and look how much fun they're having. Like, look what you could be experiencing right now. And I think that's always, it's such a hot commodity, travel. And of course, we've also had negotiations that in the end, we thought to ourselves, okay, they're not going to do it without budget. You know what? For now, let's leave it. But they will always end up wanting to travel at some point. Even if it doesn't work out this year, we all, I would say probably 70% of the time, from influencers who initially declined the offer or we couldn't come to a common ground on, will come back when they want to book their next trip, because of course it's a free trip. You're
giving a lot of credit to the travel side. I think some of it is also, again, how you're thinking about this process, because you blend in. There's plenty of marketers out there working in travel companies giving trips who would never blend in, they'd never make it obvious that you can always contact us later and send examples of trips. And these little details are really important, I think. And yeah, you show up enthusiastic about the thing that you're providing. You treat people well with genuine interest. And then if they say, hey, I need $1,000 on top, or 90,000, then it's like, oh, well, no, we can't do that, but that's okay. That doesn't make you a terrible person or make me a terrible person. Let's just go our separate ways. And if ever this could work out, then please get in touch. And maybe is it okay if I ping you in 8 months? I think that's you close everything on a positive note. Maybe you check back in and like some posts once in a while. And
100%. Just kind of keep engaged a little bit, and really try to make sure that we do stay at the forefront of their mind as well.
Yeah. Let's talk warm lead capture, maybe, since you've done enough of these big partnerships and done enough outreach, and I'm sure some folks somehow get in touch with you. How do you handle that workflow and audit folks and so on?
So as we've really put a lot of time and effort, and I was actually for the last year also running the social media team as well, and the channel, and kind of really combining these two to grow in social media and grow in brand awareness and have them always tagging us back. And it just grew and grew and grew with influencer marketing, plus the content we were creating a lot in-house as well. And I think that the more this grew and the more that other influencers saw their colleagues or friends traveling with us, the more they were thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind a trip as well to Iceland, to, I don't know, Tanzania. So we do get a lot of hot leads. Some of them come in directly through Instagram. Some of them try and email us. Some of them come in, through LinkedIn even. I've had a few requests there. But my favorite hot leads are the ones who only disclose they're an influencer once they've booked their trip. I think this is pure magic in influencer marketing, where an influencer is so excited and passionate about your travels and your trips and your product and service that they're more than happy to just book a trip. And then, let's see if we can do a collaboration. You know that they were really interested in the product. You know that they're enthusiastic. They're already probably excited. They're already probably making their own little packing lists. And then a couple of weeks before, it's kind of oh, by the way, I'm also an influencer. Maybe you want to let your influencer marketing team know this. And then we can always offer to either cover the full trip, part of it, maybe a weekend of it, for example. And yeah, that's always really, really cool how we can basically combine their interest then with a campaign. And these have worked very, very successfully in the past.
So do you have a process? So let's say you get a LinkedIn ping, a Facebook message, you get 10 on Instagram, the customer support team gets a couple messages, and you get an email here or there. How do you kind of funnel all this down? Do you have a step? I imagine, knowing you, that you have some kind of system for this, or you address things on the fly? Yeah,
so what we normally do is they come into my inbox, or get forwarded to me or whatever, and then I go straight to Modash and first check the statistics before checking content, before checking anything, because that's more of a lengthy process. And if the statistics are decent or great, then I will hand them straight over to someone in the team. Okay. And this is something I normally kind of weigh up in terms of, okay, who's had the most hot leads recently, who's been really excelling with scouting, who could really do with a completely different category of influencer right now, and then kind of distribute yeah, through the team then, in terms of who I think this influencer would make most sense to talk to.
Gotcha. So you probably had to sit down with support or with sales at some point and say like, hey, when you hit these kind of things, you don't need to respond. Just forward things to me. I'll handle that. Is that basically how it went down?
Yeah, definitely. So I feel very lucky in a lot of ways because influencer marketing at Tourlane is very exciting to everyone at Tourlane. Everyone's so curious to see how this all works. I think not a lot of people have heard of it or maybe believed in it before. But with the progress that we've seen and the performance that we've driven, which has been incredible compared to a lot of other companies I know, people are suddenly kind of perking up and being like, oh, like what are they doing? And everyone's very excited about this. And I host quarterly coffee chats across the whole company where I share insights and learnings and do like a short presentation where it's kind of ask me anything about influencer marketing that you want to, for teams that are maybe developers or in the HR team, and they all have lots of questions which are really interesting. They will have lots of suggestions as well for influencers, which is great for scouting. Everyone's so interested and so I think at the beginning maybe a little critical, but in a good way. Like I think as soon as I kind of explained things, everyone was really excited to see, and we also post weekly in the channels on Slack to say like, okay, watch out for these 3 influencers. This is where they're going this week. Make sure to follow them on Instagram, and you can really hear feedback kind of almost in real time where I'm getting messages saying like, oh, I just saw Cloudy's post and like, oh, this was great. And I think because of all of this, everyone's well aware of influencer marketing within the company, and we have so many processes set up already in place. And
I talk with some folks who have maybe even like a fear of involving other people, or they don't want to bother other people inside the company. And I think part of it is because they're not sure that everyone buys into what they're doing. And I think it's generally such an exciting field, whether you're in travel or elsewhere. Like it's just so cool to see someone celebrate the thing that you do for work, I think. We have some people even posting about Modash, and it's one of my favorite things to share. Like, oh, this guy on TikTok got 100 million views on a TikTok about our fake follower tool or whatever. It's really exciting for everybody just because it's a little recognition. And yeah, you know, I think people like to see that their work is seen, and that's kind of what happens here. Has there been any challenges in getting buy-in from the teams, or that was kind of your process, was just I'm gonna over communicate the impact of this, highlight how beautiful it is at the same time, and then you're good to go? Yeah,
I think I came in kind of hitting the ground running when I joined, and everyone was very curious. Some people were interested, some people were excited. But the first influencer trip that we did was incredible performance. I think she made, in terms of booking value, around 300,000 euros just from her pre-trip, on-trip, and post-trip content, where people were like, oh, okay, so it works. Like, okay,
I get it.
We get it now. Like, you're okay.
Yeah.
We won't question it anymore. So that was a very, very good start, for sure. And now that we are so profitable with this paid channel, and really just ramping up volume, and we have so many people on board where I can really walk around the office, and the sustainability team will be like, oh, like we want to do electric vehicles for influencers in Iceland, like what can we do? And people are just kind of coming to me with all these cool ideas now and like what they want to push. We have people from travel product who are making connections with our partners on the ground in the country saying, oh, actually, we've got a super cool Canada campaign coming up that we'd love to push maybe like an ex-professional skier for example. So yeah, everyone's like really excited, and I feel like getting more and more heavily involved, which is always great to see that the work is appreciated and recognized. And I make sure also, even this morning, for example, after this really nice in-person coffee chat, I posted in like the whole company Slack channel and said like congratulations to this one destination expert who had planned the trip for the influencer I was meeting this morning. I said, you've absolutely like nailed it. She is so convinced by our product. Like you've really gone above and beyond with this too. And it's so nice to see like the 100 reactions that you get on Slack in terms of like praising someone else, because it all ties in together for influencers. You have a little team that you've mentioned a couple of times. How many people are in there? I think you told me 3 or 4. Yeah, exactly. So I had the first 2 team members join actually the same date about a year ago. And I think the question that came down from our founder and CEO was, okay, I love what you're doing. How can we 10 times this? And so I really had to go into like a huge pitch to figure out what I needed, what would make sense, how to scale in a profitable way. And I knew that I would, of course, need more people on board, but I knew that I wanted 2 people who had experience already. I think it's super important. I think for talking to micro-influencers, junior is okay. But I think when talking to macros, you do need that bit of experience. Talking to managers, you need to know how to negotiate. You need this communication skills as well. So that was something I was really, really looking for while hiring. And yeah, so we kicked off the hiring process, and we were also doing like take-home tasks as well, like please draft an influencer outreach email, but also we were asking questions like, so like role play maybe a little bit with me right now. What if I'm saying in a call, no, I will not do this content for that amount of money? So I was really looking for very, very high quality hires there. And I got very, very lucky to find the 2 hires that I have now in the team for influencer growth managers are their official titles. And that's we're looking to hire 1 more then in Q2 as well. We really break down. So we were looking for a long time at performance in general as a channel. But I think now that I'm wanting these team members to also like start initiating like a development plan and to really think about what they want to get out of this job, but also what they want to learn, how they can really bring more impact to the team, to the marketing team, to the whole company. We're also breaking down the KPIs for each individual person. So it's very data-driven at Tourlane, which I love, really, really performance-focused. But that kind of does mean that brand awareness, which I would always consider the biggest benefit of influencer marketing, isn't taken into consideration like as much as it could be.
It's an extra.
It's an extra bonus for sure. So we're way, way more focused on we have a very specific kind of lead channel coming in. So when someone applies over the website, okay, I'd like a South Africa trip, 2 people, this much budget, they immediately become a lead, as long as like their phone number is legit and everything. Once they've had a first call with someone, a sales rep or like travel destination expert, then they then become an opportunity. And once they then book, they become a booking. So we have like clear funnels in this whole process as to, okay, so how many people dropped out after becoming a lead? How many people dropped out after becoming an up? So we've got very data-driven numbers on how many leads each influencer brings in, how many ops each influencer brings in, their conversion rates, their booking, their gross booking value. We have average order values. So we really go like nitty-gritty into the details on, we use Looker and really analyze every single influencer's performance and then think about how that reflects to each team member in terms of, we have one team member who really scouts very on-brand accounts. So like really aesthetically pleasing, like very lovely families, where the performance we see is what I would consider normal. And then we have the other influencer growth manager who's just scouting some outrageous profiles where I always think to myself, if these perform well, like I will get you a drink, and then they always perform well. So I feel like we've got 2 very, very different personalities in the team for the growth managers who are reaching out to the influencers and negotiating and everything. And they both really have their strengths and really balance each other out as well, which is really nice, of course. We're very focused on the KPIs. We're also even looking at like cross-conversion rates. We're deep diving into the profitability of each influencer kind of one at a time because, of course, like the way that Tourlane makes money, it's not that, okay, they made 100K in booking value, that's all of our money now. Like, of course, we have to pay like the flights, the providers, the accommodations, everything. So for an influencer to become a profitable attribution channel, it takes quite a lot of bookings to get there. And it's something that we're constantly monitoring where we think to ourselves, okay, so by the end of the month, we want to reach this target. So let's ask for one more cheeky story. Just see if they'll do it for us. Just include that code one more time. Maybe we can bump it up to 400 euros instead of just 200 euros. And like, let's see how this plays out. But it's a very performance-driven and data-driven position that we have here as a channel, as are all of the marketing channels at Tourlane. But I think, it's very impressive how the performance has really come across.
Got you. So then from your teammates, from their KPI perspective, they're basically measured on the success of the influencers that they source, or do do you also have other parts of the funnel, like they also have to recruit and so on, or are they purely sourcing focused?
So they participate in every single stage of the funnel in terms of like the outreach emails, the negotiation processes, the trip planning. They even like assist in terms of letting the destination expert know, okay, so this is the budget that we want to look at. They want to go for 10 days, but we're offering them 6, so make sure you do not book 10 days on our cost. Like, we're all very hands-on with this, and so they're involved really from start to finish. They watch the content, they advise, they conclude the campaigns, they look at the data, they analyze it, see how they can improve in the future. So we're all doing this kind of thing as well. And
then they have targets based on that. It's like at the end of by the end of the quarter, you know, we want to hit X gross booking value or that kind of thing. And then you just watch the whole funnel, and together as a team, you figure out like, hey, you could do a little better on outreach and you could do a little better on sourcing. So why don't you two come together and like figure it out? And, or, you know, as a team, you approach those things from like each segment of the funnel, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And we also, it's a very much like, the whole process really comes in waves, because when we have influencers traveling, and in January, for example, I think we had 12 or 14 traveling, it's very, very focused, the whole work capacity on monitoring these influencers. Anything can go wrong, of course, on a trip. Someone's kid could get sick, they could miss a bus. Like, there are so many things that you really have to just make sure everything's going as well as possible. So during January, February, during our high booking season, we are really, really low on outreach emails. But then, for example, in March, we're trying to pump out like at least 25 per person again. And then I know that April, of course, there's school holidays, so this is always a high booking season for us too. But then in April, we'll focus more on negotiations from all of those influencers we've reached out to in March. Then we'll have them booked in for summer vacations for the kids, of course. And it's just kind of like a cycle that it moves in this way, where you kind of go through these stages all together a lot of the time and help each other, give each other advice. We hold lots of workshops, like 3 or 4 of us, but also within marketing, even more people who have anything they would like to contribute to this, any kind of success factors they'd like to see. And we do a lot of brainstorming together and everything. So, yeah.
Awesome. So you break up this workflow into pieces, and then you measure each piece individually, and then you optimize each piece together as a team.
Yeah.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. I love it. Everything you say makes me want to ask like 2 more questions. But is there anything, I know you prepped a little bit, is there anything on your list that you wanted to get across, like tips and tricks, fun facts?
I think one thing that we wanted or to go over maybe, or that I had in mind, was to talk about the success of the channel now, because we've actually seen incredible performance recently.
I think give me the numbers.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time to set up the channel. Like, we had to, of course, make the contracts from scratch, English, German. The contracts are like 8 pages long. We need to cover every single scenario. It's not just like a 1-pager and then send me an invoice situation. It's really, okay, so how many children are you allowed to bring on this trip with you? What dates are you going to be traveling? It has to be very, very specific. We set up all the invoicing processes, of course, as well. So it took some time to really kickstart and like get influencers off the ground. And then we had quite a trial period where, as I mentioned before, we were really testing out different categories, testing out different types of influencers, different statistics. And I feel like as a paid channel and influencer channel, I feel like it's not going to be profitable immediately or even in the near future. And the goal was, of course, to be a profitable channel by the end of 2022. And looking at the numbers in summer, it was disheartening, to say the least. We'd spent a lot of money on a lot of trips and hadn't seen a lot of performance come in yet. And that's when we really narrowed the scouting process down with this scorecard, is we realized, okay, so now we know who performs well, and we really need to think about how to increase the profitability of this channel moving forward. So I think at the end of Q2 last year, we were on around minus 29K in terms of like CM4, which for us is like the profitability of the channel. And I remember the target being over 100K just in profitability per quarter, and thinking like, oh my goodness, like this is not going to look well, like not going to look good on me by the time we're done with Q1. But we'd managed then at that point to scout incredibly good influencers for January, February and March, because we've had the scorecard for a couple of months already. And I remember, I think it was one of the last days of January, we hit like 0. And I was over the moon. I was so happy that I actually immediately set up like a CM4 like profitability like 0 party with just the 4 of us to take them out for drinks and stuff. And we actually had that last week when everyone was back in Berlin, which was really nice because by the time we had this, so about 2 months later, we'd hit around 127K. So we'd overachieved by a lot our targets. We'd come out of nothing. And yeah, I only have my team to thank for sure. Like they've been incredible along the way, and we've all kept each other's like spirits high, even if it was a bit difficult with like mass amounts of trips going, any issues on the trips. We've all kind of held it together really well. So we weren't just celebrating 0 in the end. We were celebrating like 130% target achievement for the quarter, which was incredible. So
that's crazy. So let me just see if I get this right. So basically, the influencer team has pulled off 130,000 in profit. That's not bookings. 130,000 in profit in a quarter, and the key was influencer selection based on good data, your scorecard experiment, and going like properly data driven. That's so cool. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think I'm still like kind of patting myself on the back a bit for this one. But it was a very nice achievement, like a target achievement drink we had the other day, because it felt a bit
Imagine
surreal.
Like you went from like in the red to break even to 100 and something thousand in, I think as you described, I caught like 8-9 months, something like that. So imagine what you can do the next 9 months. That's crazy.
Yeah, definitely exciting, honestly. I think looking at the influencers we have coming up, looking at where they're heading, looking at their audience, I think there are a lot of really exciting things coming up for influencers at Tourlane.
Do you blend in those rebookings to your ROI calculation, by the way? Like if you pitch an influencer and give them a free trip, but they come back a year later and book, do you blend that in or you don't do that? Oh, you do?
No, we don't.
Oh, you don't do that yet? Wow.
Even not including them. This is something I've been pushing for a long time, and I would love to see attributed to influencer marketing. But I think it's something that is currently attributed to direct marketing, as like they're kind of re-entering the funnel again. And yeah, it's a really, really exciting time, I think, especially with the profitability being there now, but also like really excelling. And okay, this was of course high booking season for us, but to think that we achieved in terms of booking value over 700K in January alone for influencer marketing, like I can only be really, really proud of the team and
that's
how
incredible.
Like everyone's kept their faith, which is great considering how much we were into negative at some point in summer.
You mentioned that you ask people, you know, people who have to negotiate with managers, you hire specifically for this as more senior role kind of, which makes perfect sense. But what's the secret? I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm really excited to hear, like, what's the secret to negotiating with creator managers? Because it's notoriously difficult, and it's increasingly common that even smaller creators will have somebody in the middle who, frankly, in my opinion, is a bit unnecessary and expensive probably. And there's lots of things I could say about managers. I mean, how many people have missed an opportunity with Tourlane, for example, to get a trip because it didn't fall into the bucket? I'm sure it's a non-zero number. So
yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, tell me how to solve this.
We work very hard on this, actually, to talk to managers. We sometimes do like brainstorming sessions to kind of collect learnings and insights that we have there. But one thing that we often do is really ask them, please do genuinely talk to your creator about this opportunity. Because I think a lot of the time they just kind of say like, no, these are the prices, they won't do it. But then they don't actually talk to the creator sometimes. And I had one case where I was negotiating for I think like 2 or 3 months with this one manager of this big German TV star, like beautiful influencer profile, and it just wasn't, we weren't getting anywhere. And I just said, look, it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere right now. We can leave it for now and just come back to me if you reconsider at some point. And the next email I got was, oh, she'd like to talk to you. And I was like, oh God, like I'm in trouble now. Like, what have I said? And I spoke to her, and I remember it was like a very difficult time because it was like 8 p.m. or something. And at the time I was in Portugal, so I had to sit in the back of a car and just had my laptop on my lap. And I think my hair was just crazy because I'd just been like my first surf lesson or something.
I'm sure
and just
your
been,
connection was great.
Swapped like by the waves. It was a nightmare, but she was so lovely and so friendly, and has become one of our best performers at this point. And we had, I think I scheduled the call for like 15 minutes just as like a feedback chat in my head. And we ended up talking for about an hour and a half about just our travel experiences and what kind of things she's looking for. And at the end of the call, she was like, screw the management. I will perform whatever you would like me to do in terms of content. Like, let's make this work together. And she's now going on her, I think we're booking in her third Tourlane trip, which is really, really exciting because she's absolutely performed so well for us. And I think a lot of it's because of that personal connection again.
Wow, it's incredible. Super cool. So is that really your ticket then? Like, sometimes the answer is so simple that it's unbelievable, but is the answer really like to look the manager in the eyes, so to speak, probably through a call like this, but to look them in the eyes and say, hey, this is an opportunity your creator wants to hear about. It would, all we ask is that you tell them that we reached out and maybe send them this little package of info.
This is often what we do. I think, and if we're really not getting anywhere with the agency, we sometimes even slide into the DMs. So
try to circumvent them. Yeah.
Avoid the emails, go to the DMs. And I've seen this before as well. This happened last week where I just couldn't come to a conclusion with the manager 6-7 months ago. And then the creator slips into our DMs being like, oh, hey, I heard you do. And I was like, they never talked to you about this, did they? Like, we've had an entire discussion about you for months, couldn't make a decision on this, and we've had to drop it. But like, if we can talk just one-on-one, amazing, like, let's go. We're happy to offer you a trip. We wanted to offer you a trip before. I think this kind of proved to us that the message doesn't always get relayed back to the influencers themselves. And if you can kind of break through the kind of hard exterior sometimes of the managers or the agencies and just get them to ask, like, can you just ask if they'd be interested in general in a trip? And like, if the general interest is there, like, let's start talking negotiations. And that's something we've really fine-tuned in terms of like our email templates, is not to mention anything about content, anything about prices, nothing at all in the first email, just to say, hey, would whoever be interested in a trip on our costs? And then that's already kind of forcing them to ask the influencer before we start negotiating.
Yeah. That's clever, actually, yeah. So don't give them a reason to say no in the beginning.
Exactly.
Force the conversation with the creator. That makes a lot of sense to me. If I think about myself in that call with the manager, then you really want to talk to them as a human being as well. A lot of what you mentioned about you know, being personal with the creator and not being afraid of being personal, I think you have to do that with this manager in the middle as well, because the manager's job and the way they get paid is when you pay the creator through them. And so any other option or any reduction in price or anything like that, these guys are really not, they might not be, like whoever their higher up is, they might not be allowed to negotiate. So it might be set prices. And then on top of that, they're not going to get paid if they barter somehow.
Exactly.
So you really have to, you can't look at that guy as or gal as a John or Jane or whatever. It has to be, or just as an agent, you have to look at them as John or Jane and say, hey, I understand this is your job. I understand this is how you make your money. But it would just mean a lot to me if you would reach out to this person on my behalf. I think you have to get past the transactional again and get to like something human.
Definitely, and especially because we're just doing the barter deals, at least right now. I think a lot of the agents are immediately like, oh, great, like here comes another one.
Yeah,
but I think
they probably see Tourlane coming from a mile away.
But I think that's also like one of the reasons we love working with creators who are really close to their managers. And I think there are some agencies and managers who, like, I would consider myself on like a friendly basis with at this point, because they know what we're doing. They know we're not going to offer the creators money, but they're still so happy to see their creators happy. And I think this is also what makes a good agent or a good manager in the end, is like, okay, so you won't make a lot of money off of this campaign, but think about how many more followers you'll get from a different kind of audience, maybe like a travel kind of audience for this account now, and how you can kind of monetize that in the future then. Like, this kind of opens the door to maybe hotels want to work with you in the future, or airlines want to work with you in the future, and to try and see the positive out of this as well. We even had an influencer who wanted to take her agent on a trip with her, which was really like quite wholesome and cute. So
that is wholesome, yeah.
Yeah, that was really nice.
The other question I had was, you mentioned that you have one person who's more inclined to do this very on-brand content level sourcing and one that's more performance-oriented, or no, you said the other one's kind of crazy, right? That was
Yeah.
the deal. Yeah. Got it, yeah. But always works out. So I'm curious, when it's super on-brand content, you have all this amazing stuff. Do you have a good function for reusing that content? Do you do something with it later? And can you walk the audience through like how to use great branded content? I think everyone's talking about UGC nowadays, but frankly, I've talked to UGC experts and I still don't really get it, or like I don't see it being executed really well, at least in-house. So I'm curious, like, can you teach me about how to leverage this UGC, or have you figured it out for yourselves yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our pre-trip and post-trip content is UGC to a big degree. So they're really showing the followers with their phone, like, okay, here's the booklet that I have. Or they even record themselves with their phone talking in a video chat to one of our destination experts. This is a lot of what the content is.
Oh, that's cool.
For, I would say, 50% of the content. So we can really, really use this content, and that's something that's gone into our contracts and we're really pulling from a lot lately, to then also use in paid social ads. So that's like a whole different team within marketing for us, but having like native ads, paid social ads, and kind of using this user-generated content then on Instagram again, and to really push with our target audience across Meta, of course, as well. We're maybe going to do some YouTube stuff too. So that's something we're definitely using, is like the pre-trip and post-trip. They're talking, especially where they don't mention the voucher code, for example, because then this is very easily reusable for other channels too. And then in terms of additional content, so this is also in the contracts that we ask for a specific amount, depending on the size normally, of high resolution images and videos that we can reuse for any marketing purposes. It's great. We see some really, really cool content. Like we have so many influencers traveling with like drones now, or like very nice cameras, like Seychelles, like close up of the tortoises on the beach, or like them in the water swimming in Phuket, and we get some really, really quality content. We have, I think I have to praise Olivia Marais for having some of the most incredible content I've ever seen in terms of branded content for us. This fabulous German actress who's such a beautiful person anyway, but she puts so much effort into the content that she creates just for us, where there's photos of her like pregnant on a safari with us in Tanzania, and she's standing like next to the Jeep where it has Tourlane written across it, and it's just her like just being casual and beautiful and like glowy and radiant. And she did the same when she went on her second Tourlane with us to Thailand, where we gifted a lot of our creators like water bottles that had Tourlane written on them, and she just took it straight with her to go traveling. And there's her like drinking water in a lake, drinking water at the beach, drinking water in the city, and I just like, oh, I absolutely love her. But we never ask for super strict guidelines on this, so we do want the trip to be fun. We don't want it to feel like work ever. So I think it's something that we always ask our creators for in like 2 weeks afterwards, where they can basically then pull the content that they think we could also reuse. We also often ask them if we'd like to reuse their content for social, for SEO, organic campaigns. We also use it in our newsletters sometimes. We often ask them for like a testimony or a quote towards their trip. And we've got some really, really beautiful SEO content now on our main homepage, where you can scroll through and see this influencer went to this destination, this is what they say about it. And it's them standing in like a beautiful rice field, or at the beach, or on the whale watching tour. And we can really, really utilize this and really leverage this as well as like a great testimony and a great review, an honest one as well, of course, of Tourlane for other customers.
One thing that we've offered that has been really helpful, especially for some more incentives-driven models where you pay for converts, for example, or that kind of thing, but can be helpful in other scenarios too, is use the content as basically inspiration leverage for the other creators. So, hey, this is some of the content that has performed the best for us in the past. So maybe it gives you some ideas what to go with. In your case, I know you lean really heavily on authenticity. In longer-term incentive model programs, it can become difficult for the creator to find new interesting ways to like place the product or tell a story in a meaningful way. So using existing content that's performed really well as a way to help them overcome that creative gap I think you mentioned one little thing that I just wanted to highlight too, which was swag for a placement of stuff. I think there's a couple things you can do with swag, and I think some brands overdo it and many underdo it. So, but one little way to create delight is like send an uninvited like box of swag to the person, like especially if it's good quality stuff. I mean, I'm sure if a creator is taking that water bottle with them, it's actually probably a decent water bottle, not like those cheap plastic things. But giving some swag, especially useful in your case where you don't really have a product you can hold. I mean, you can see it around you when you're traveling, but it helps them to place the product and create create the impression, I guess you could say. And then in the case of digital products like apps, ride hailing, food delivery, that kind of stuff that we've seen, swag can be a really nice touch. Just because it means that when they're in the back of the Uber or the Bolt or whatever, they at least you can see the logo sitting there next to them as they take their photo, this kind of thing. Just a little hint there. And the last one, I want to get your opinion on this. This is just a wild card idea I've been sharing with people in calls, and I'm not sure if anyone's going to take me up on it. But when you have lots of creators and you want to create delight, but you don't have travel content as this amazing thing that you can push people through, one thing I thought of is, what do creators want to do? They want to make awesome stuff and they want to have like interesting content. I have told some folks to hire a photographer on staff, and just their entire job is to hang out with like one ambassador a day, basically, and help them create incredible content, some branded, some not, and just give them make them feel a little famous for a day. I think that would be
absolutely.
I
think that's a really cool suggestion for sure. I think this is also something that influencers really consider work as well, is like positioning everything right, like getting the camera out, putting everything on the hard drive. Like this for them is where like the hard work comes in sometimes. And I think to be able to kind of provide them with this kind of service too, I can only recommend. I think, of course, sending someone on a trip is a lot more expensive as a photographer, but I know that lots of influencers also choose to take a +1 who is a photographer with them as well. And this is just, of course, an added bonus for us then, and always performs really great too. But I think if you have a product or something or a service that you feel it may be difficult for the influencer to capture the way that you envision it, I think sending or bringing them to a place to do a kind of photo shoot or video shoot, I think is such a strong stance as well in terms of content creation.
Yeah, and I think in your case, your situation is pretty unique in the sense you've gotten really great at sourcing. You're not super localized, so your pool is pretty large. You can work with people from all over. One example where I gave this photographer was for an e-commerce store. I think they wouldn't mind me talking about them. They're called Health Labs. They've been a friend of the family for a while, and they have a great program. It works super well. Long-term incentives model. They optimize over time. They have these really efficient like CRM workflows and this kind of thing. And they came to me and they're like, one, they're looking for ways to create delight, inspire people, get past that creative gap, and build the relationship. Especially, they see lots of creators who do really well for a while, and then the number of converts per month trends off. And it's like, how can we pick this back up again? And you think about the problems you might face as someone who tries to create content all the time. You just hit like a creative wall eventually, or life happens or whatever, or you just forget kind of about this brand because you haven't talked to them in a few months. And so really interesting way to give them some value and create the delight that's difficult to when you don't have a trip to send them on, and to help create really high quality content with creators who might not be they might be more story centered, like a day in the life person who isn't making super beautiful Instagram photos or this kind of thing, as I imagine Tourlane might be working with sometimes. Anyway, I like this idea. I want to see somebody really pull it off and crush it. So definitely. This was my chance to plug it. Thank you for listening. What's next? What are the big things you want to figure out next? And what's the big next thing you want to do? Any cool ideas on the horizon?
Yeah, so one thing I'm actually very excited to explore and test are French influencers.
Oui.
It's something that we already have pushed quite far with Tourlane in terms of the French market. And I've had some very strange Google Translate meetings and email threads now with some French influencers. But I'm very excited to hopefully hire someone French speaking soon to help me with that. but to see how they perform as well, because historically, at least in my experience, French influencers have performed very well. It's very hard because no one performs as well as the German market. This is like kind of a thing. But there have been some really cool potential candidates that we're looking at now to send on first French trips. And we're now doing research into the French market in terms of what destinations would they most like to go to, because it's not the same as the German market. And thinking about where to send the influencers, as so many of the bookings come in for the same destination the influencer went to, and how to kind of push this in the right way. So something I'm super, super excited about is to explore this market a lot more. And yeah, hire someone who speaks French would be helpful. Good
Nice.
start.
Well, there you go. We can plug this as the call to action is if you speak French and you want to work with someone who's exceptional at creator partnerships in a company that's been growing fast, a travel company that survived COVID, that's like already insane. So really, really great place to go cut your teeth on influencers, I think. Nice. Well, thank you so much, Georgia. This has been so much fun. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for having me.
Next year, when you come back on March 31st, 2024, I want to hear about 10 million that quarter.
Oh, don't worry, you will. I've got all the ambition, all the gear, and no idea.
Cool. I'm gonna steal all your secrets again next year. But cool. Let's end it there, and we can stop recording.